Hey everyone, it's me, Vic. Today I'm going to talk about the Elgato prompter, specifically for Mac users. Now, I'm going to hop on camera here. Hi. This is going to be some really cool stuff because I'm also filming in vertical. Now, I wrote a script, but I'm totally going off script, y'all, because there's some things I want to show you, and voice sync is going to be one of them, right? But we got to get into all that, which is why this script exists. I spent a good while writing it. I know I should follow it, but sometimes your best work isn't always scripted, right? So let's get started. Now, first things first, when you get an Elgato prompter, you're going to want to go to elgato.com and you're going to look for Camerhub. They're currently in 2.0. Oh, hold on. For those who get to see the vertical content, you get to see me looking at me. But this is a really cool feature about Prompter too, but we're going to get there. So you're going to come to Camerhub. Oh, and you know what I can do? I can show y'all the prompter like on screen so that way you can see what I'm talking about. Cool, huh? All right, let's turn that back off real quick. But you're going to download Camerhub 2.0. Once you download Camerhub, you want to install it. It's going to prompt you to install Display Link, right? So, and this is all on Mac. There's like only one feature difference for Windows users, but we're not, I mean, I can mention it, but we're literally filming everything on Mac OS. Okay. So you're going to go to downloads if you haven't already, right? Or if it doesn't prompt you, you're still going to go to Display Link, and then they even have it for Mac OS. The current or even the version from Elgato will work. Now, after you install everything and you're like, oh, cool, let me get started. Let me pull up Camerhub, right? Wrong. I have Camerhub open. Okay, so you think, okay, let me go ahead and start this up. And then, oh, you know what? I don't like where the prompter is. I need to rearrange it. Wrong. You're going to close out of Camerhub. I can't do that right now actually, I can. Yes, I can. Okay, hold on. I am going to close out of Camerhub real quick. So all you're going to see is a display in vertical, and then I am going to talk about arranging. You're going to go into your settings after you install Display Link, right? And you're going to arrange. Now, once you arrange it, this is what it usually starts out as, and we're going to select Done. When I launch Camerhub again, it's going to go into that area that I told it to, right? So that's why you want to end Camerhub first, install everything, arrange it to the way that you want, hit done. This is only on Mac that you have to do it this way, right? So now that we're done arranging it, we can launch Camerhub again. Oh, is it doing the out of focus thing? Hold on, y'all. I don't know why it does that on Mac. It never retains anything I tell it to, which is a little frustrating for Mac users, right? So you have to like every time you close out a Camerhub, go back into it. And what I've learned is it also doesn't like virtual camera. It's kind of buggy, glitchy, so you're going to see that a lot with the camera. I'm plugged directly into the Mac. Well, I'm using a Mac Mini M4, and it does that. It glitches out. Why, I have no idea. I think it's a little buggy. I think that they could work on it, but I did find the workaround for the prompter. So now you're able to see everything, right? So let's get started into these features for prompter because that's specifically what we're focusing on. All right, so you're going to see here, your output is going to be Elgato prompter. I'm assuming if you have more than one connected to the same Mac or even PC, you'll probably see duplicates here or additionals, I'm sorry. You can change the brightness of the prompter, right? We can go dark, we can go bright. Actually, I'm going to keep it bright because like it's not hurting my eyes. You've got on Windows, you have contrast. We don't have that. Let me make sure. Yeah. On Windows, you have contrast. We don't have that on Mac. So that's like the one missing feature. The next is going to be content type, right? So like you could use it as a display. And in this case, I think I'm going to go ahead and show you what I have here on my prompter currently. I can turn on or off the little cross on knowing where my camera is, where to look. So this is all part of my script, okay? Just trust the process. Sometimes, like, I can look at a script, I know my key points, and I basically treat my prompter like PowerPoint when I do these videos, but it works for me, everybody's different. Some people wanna follow solely a script, and that's cool, but, like, I can't be that structured. I've tried, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but we're gonna show off a couple of features, right? And I actually have a video showing voice sync, so I will clip that in. Um, I don't know what it is with Mac, but sometimes it doesn't always pick up voice sync 100%, so it, like, stops after a while. And you'll see that in the video, and you're not gonna see me doing, "Hi, I'm Vic." But you'll see that I'm using preview mode with the prompter, so I'll clip that in. I'm gonna give a pause real quick in the video so I can insert that part into the actual video. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to talk about are these content types, right? So display. If I wanted to, for example, when I'm live streaming, because there's no multi-chat feature yet, and we're going to get to the chat tab, but I use ground control because I stream to Twitch and YouTube, right? But I also make just YouTube content. So Stream Elements has this handy multi-chat feature, and that's what I'm going to send over to my prompter so that way I can see the viewer count, I can see the chat, and I can see who subscribes in the activity feed. For me, I find that beneficial because it tells me when the ads are rolling, it lets me know what's going on, but I'm also able to interact with my chat real time and give them full eye contact, just like this, right? I know it seems a little creepy. Now, if I wanted to close this out, right, like, because I don't need ground control open, obviously, right now, but that's what I use for multi-chat because I'm just on 2 platforms. I closed out of my other platforms such as TikTok and even my personal media. No longer on Instagram. I'm no longer on personal media, but it's just Twitch and YouTube. So you'll find me there under iLadyVic. But let's carry on here. Also, don't forget to like and follow and sub if you like the content. I am going to start making more Mac content regularly, but like we're just focusing on prompter today. I know. I went on a little off subject there. Oh, I was like, where's my mouse? Okay. So the next feature is text, right? Which now you can see my prompter right above me. Like that's my prompter screen. So like it does recognize it as a second display. The cool thing I was able to do with OBS, which I was struggling with Meld, because if not, I would usually record all my content on Mac and Meld, was to only show just the Mac screen and not OBS. Like you can actually omit OBS when you're recording on Mac. That's really cool. You can't do that on PC, but you can do it on Mac. So that's really nifty. Just FYI for those Mac creators. If you're using OBS, you can actually do that with a desktop, which I think is really cool. Anyway, let's get back to the subject here. You can create a script, right? Like, hello world, right? And we can add that and we can go into the script. Now, if you want to see the whole thing right here, okay, let's turn the prompter off real quick so you can actually see Camerhub, which is going to house prompter. So you do have to install it. Again, display link first. Oh, and if you're not seeing if display link is on or not, I'm not turning it off because I need it right now. But this is usually going to start off. You want to switch this on and then you want to open Camerhub after you've already moved your prompter where you want it. I'm currently using an ultra wide monitor, which is a Samsung Galaxy Odyssey G9. It's a 49-inch. And so my prompter is in the middle, like if it were a dual screen, right? Like 2 displays, but like in one without a bezel in the middle, which I absolutely love. But I was struggling for the longest time to get it to work because the prompter would appear on the side in picture by picture instead of on the top in a weird diagonal, just for my use. And so I got that working. So for those who are struggling with it, again, the process is going to be that you're going to install everything, close out a Camerhub, make sure that you turn on display link so that way you can actually see that the prompter screen is powered on with the display. And then you're going to go into your settings, right? Like we talked about here. I'm gonna pull settings up real quick. You're going to come here and you're going to arrange it wherever you want it, right? And then after that's said and done, you're going to launch Camerhub. That is the only workaround that I have found for Mac users because I was dealing with it for about 2 weeks before I could make the video. So that way I can make sure I was doing what I needed to do and give y'all full eye contact talking about these features because you want to be able to use the product that you buy, but you want it to work the way you want it to work, right? So you have to do that in order to get it to work properly with Mac OS. Um, all right, so let's get back into Camera Hub here, right? So that's going to be my script, but in order to display that to you, now you're able to see that directly on the prompter, which I think is a really cool thing, right? So that's pretty interesting. And the next feature is going to be chat. So there's Twitch chat. It was chat beta for a while. It just says chat now, and that is whether it's on PC or Mac OS. And I think it's a really cool thing. I would like to see more integration. I would like to see YouTube. I would like to see TikTok. I would like to see other platforms that people are primarily streaming live on. Not only that, my little wish list is if you see at this top little, well, I'm pointing in one section. So if you see in the top little corner, like I want to say at the top right, I would say that it would be ideal to have like a viewer count and then a combined chat, like a multi-chat with a combined viewer chat. That's my wish list though, right? So let's move on here. So we can get back to the text. Now, as you can see, I've literally prepared an entire script for y'all, but I'm already knowing my key points, so I don't really need to stick with this, right? So I could go into display mode, I can go in here. It's really cool. But I'm gonna actually stick into the script here for a reason. So I'm gonna condense that part, right? Because that's gonna be like something we're gonna get to in a minute. All right, so you can add all of your different scripts in here. And then if you have a Stream Deck, you can actually toggle which scripts you want to work on. Like I said, sometimes your best work isn't scripted. Sometimes you just need it for key points. So that way you stay on topic. All right, appearance. You can change the font, right? I can go to Arial Black. I can do Comic Sans. I can do Courier New. But the really cool one that Elgato added is Open Dyslexic. So for people who are dyslexic, this actually comes in very handy for them to see the font clearly enough where it's going to help them say the right things or read it the right way. And I have to applaud them for that because it's those little quality of life details that I find extremely important when it comes to usability. And I think that that's a very inclusive thing. So kudos, Elgato. All right, so I'm going to go back to the one that I primarily use because it's perfect for my viewing. Now you can change the font size. I'm going to remember mine is 45, so I can make it itty bitty. I can make it giant size, so that way I can make sure I'm reading it right. But mine is the ideal area is going to be 45 for myself. Now, Elgato does mention a pro tip, right? And a lot of people say, oh, but if you're reading it, you're looking from left to right. Well, this is probably going to be where it comes in handy, right? You want to probably, I'm going to put that at 80. What did I have it at before? Yeah, I mean, that's good. You want to probably condense it to the middle when you're actually using a text as opposed to reading a live chat, right? Because, like, if you're live, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I can use the whole screen. But if you're actually reading something off of a script, you want to look like you're not reading, right? So that's where this comes in handy, where you're able to see it just like in a small little text format, condensed, so that way it doesn't look like you're looking from left to right. I've learned that. I have. You can do vertical margin too, right? So vertical margin is basically going to let you see only a specific amount of text, so that way you're able to focus on what you're saying. I personally don't need that because I like to see what's coming up. I'm a little bit more of a fast talker. Some people talk slowly, so it works for them that way. But I try to keep a consistent pace when I'm speaking. Sometimes, though, I do get a little tongue tied and I'm like, maybe I need to slow down a bit. All right, line spacing. So the cool thing about this is like if you want to take your time or slow yourself down, you could say, hey, everyone, it's me. Today I'm diving into, right? So that way you give yourself a little bit of a pause, but you're able to let voice sync keep up with you as well. Speaking of voice sync, we're going to get into that here very, very shortly. Now, there's opacity. Mine is at 72 just because it's easier. But if you look, you can go darker so you can just solely focus on text. But if you want to see what's going on in the background there, right? Like, I think I had mine at what, 72? Yeah. So for me, this is probably the ideal because I like to keep it a little bit transparent. And the reason why is for opacity for preview. So if you have an Elgato Facecam or a Facecam Pro or a Facecam Mark II, you can use preview mode. Yeah, this is what's actually behind me every time I'm going live, right? Like, ignore the blanket. I use it for cozy, like, I get cozy, okay? But this is what actually is behind the scenes here. And so, like, if I wanted to focus and see what I'm looking like, right? Like, I wanna make sure I look good, but I also wanna make sure that I am not looking like I'm reading from, like, left to right. I wanna make sure that I'm able to focus solely on what I need to, but that I'm also making sure that I look decent on camera. So that's where this preview mode comes in extremely handy. Now the problem, you just saw that little glitch, right? I'm gonna turn off preview mode for a reason because I have the little cross in the middle, which I'm gonna get to. But, the opacity for preview is there for a reason. So, like, if I have preview mode on, it it works. I like that. So I'm able to see, like, what the opacity is when I'm live preview, right? I don't need to worry about that right now because I have it set. Mine is going to be at, 72. Now, you can change the color of the text, right? Like, let's just say I wanted it to be blue, right? I could do blue, although that just hurts my eyes. It does. Alright, so we're gonna go back to white. Okay. And then the background, right? Most people like a dark background so they can solely focus on the background. Oh, excuse me. But let's just say I wanted to change the color, so I would lighten it, right? Let's just say I want the color to be pink, right? Well, then it changes it to pink. That kind of hurts my eyes a little bit. Let's go back to black. Okay. And it's better for your eyes. Like, you can gauge what you want when it comes to the prompter and change all of those things custom for yourself. I think that's a really cool little quality of life, although I would say keep it. I mean, if you're like me and you're very sensitive, like, visually, as far as, like, with lights beaming on you, you probably wanna keep it as simple as possible and just keep it white and black. But, alright, let's move on to scrolling, and scrolling is going to be either constant, right? So, like, I have a Stream Deck Plus, so these dials, I can literally turn it or whatever, right? Or I can just basically do this, and then go back into my script, and I've already talked about this part, so we can just let that scroll, right? But if I wanted to, and you can auto loop this thing, so, like, once it's done, if you get off topic or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, you know what? Let me revisit whatever." You can come back to that just letting it auto loop. But if you have a really long script, you probably don't wanna do that, right? So, let's go ahead and turn off constant and go to voice sync. I have no idea where I am on my script, but let's play around with voice sync. So for this, I hooked up my Wave 3 to my Mac so that way I could use that microphone, but I am using my Wave DX for the video recording. And what I am gonna do, just because I want to, say, hey, and show you voice sync. Let me turn that off so that way I'm not cheating, right? Right. Okay. There we go. So voice sync. And then what you want to do is you actually want to, in here, hit the bottom play. So, like, after you set up your microphone, you can auto loop if you want to. And I prefer highlight text so that way I know what I need to say and what I've already said. That way I don't get lost in my own script. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play, but I'm going to click the button on my Stream Deck. So actually, I'll just do it from here. Hey everyone, it's me, Vic. Today I'm diving into the Elgato prompter, and it syncs up just like that. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off because I know where I'm at. And I think that's a really cool thing. Now, does it always work well on Mac OS? As you can clearly see, sometimes it cuts out. I do not have this problem on Windows at all whatsoever. Um, I think it's still, like, fine-tuning, so I think that's something as a takeaway for Elgato to work on, especially for Mac users. So use with discretion, right? Alright, you can change your reading position of your script, right? Like, if you wanna go lower, if you wanna go higher. For me, I like to make sure that I'm basically level with the first line, so that way I know what's coming next. And that's just my preference. Everybody has a different preference, so, choose what works for you. All right, so now we're going to talk about overlays. Now, overlays, you're going to see a whole bunch of them. You're going to see camera. And as you can see, like, I want to point out right here, you can see the little icons, right? There's a circle, there's the cross, which is my personal favorite. There's snap, which is pretty standard, and then the square. Now, this lets you know exactly where your camera is, where you need to look, and then you can choose your preference. Like for me, because when you're reading a script, you want to make sure that you don't really have too much overpowering your script because then you're trying to say, is that an R or is that a Y? Like, what is that? So the cross definitely helps with that. Now, if you wanted to, right, like not have the cross overlaying your word, you could even do that. That way you know, oh, okay, that's everyone. So it really just comes down to preference when it comes to where you want things to be aligned. But me personally, like I can handle that. I can handle the cross in the middle. But everybody's different. So, to each their own. Now, the other cool thing about this is like if I wanted it to be, I don't know, right there, right? Because like that's where actually the camera is in my prompter, right? So like I could actually just change my viewing to like right there and be like, oh, that's exactly where I need to look to give you full eye contact, right? But like if I wanted to go and be extra, I could do this and be like, okay, I'm looking directly at everything and I'm not having to struggle reading because there's line spacing or, it's condensed really on your preference. And I think that's an amazing thing with the Elgato prompter. I wanted to thank you all for watching because this is going to be a very handy tool for those who have a prompter, whether you want to use it for recording your content and giving full eye contact to a camera, or if you're wanting to use it for chat, or even just using it as a second monitor, like what I'm doing currently above me, right? So, like I said, I can do ground control, for example, right? Like, because I can't put my YouTube chat on there and I can't see the viewer count and I don't know when I'm getting ads or when there's an activity feed going on. It's just purely chat, right? And I love it. I love how simple it is. But like those are features that I wish for with when it comes to this particular chat feature right here. So that's where display comes in handy, right? You can use it as a secondary monitor. And that is one beautiful thing. So, like I said, if after you've arranged everything, you can actually move your mouse. You can use it as a secondary monitor on your Mac OS. Um, Everything is pretty much identical for Windows, minus the contrast feature right here on Windows. I hope this has helped you as far as setting up your Elgato prompter. If you've already got one, congratulations. And I hope that this is going to be helpful for Mac users, but also for Windows users. Minus that one feature for Windows that Macs don't have. But thank you for watching, everyone.